Hello, and welcome to Social Workers Rise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We are going to hear stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine here. If you have worked with anybody who loves video games, then listen up. This episode is for you. You are in the right place, my friend. Listen up, because we have Dawn Davis here with us today as a guest. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's LMFT approved supervisor and a certified geek therapist. Yes, please. She's been in the field in community mental health for 6 years, both as a clinician and supervisor. And now she's also a full-time private practice clinician through her own therapy practice called Therapy That Gets Me LLC. She feels like she self-identifies as a total geek when it comes to supervision and sharing her knowledge. So I'm really excited to have you here, Dawn. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me, Catherine. It's great to be here.
Yeah, excited to talk with you. I love it because Geek Therapy is something that I only recently heard, maybe within the last year or two, but it has been around and it's a really, really great concept, especially, well, I'm selfishly interested to learn about this because the clients that I work with, especially those boys who are in the middle school age or high school age, they seem to be very closed down because all they do is video games. And I would love to be able to connect with them on a deeper level or on a different level, like something different that's meeting them where they're at. So with that said, tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and I kind of went over what you do, but what do you do kind of on a daily basis?
Okay. Everything you said already kind of explains my credentials. I'm licensed in states of Pennsylvania and Virginia. I'm located in Pennsylvania, so any work that I do in Virginia is telehealth. So when I went into private practice full time, my dream trifecta life is doing a combination of the three things that I love about our field. So seeing clients, building my clinical supervision practice, and providing continuing education trainings. So I currently contract with Geek Therapeutics and a few other agencies for client referrals and for anyone who finds me on Psychology Today. And then I also provide individual supervision for clinicians going for their LMFT, or if they're going for their LCSW or LPC and want some systemic relational work aimed supervision, then I offer that as well. As of 2 weeks ago, I started my own group supervision as well. So it's a nice, intimate, small group right now that I'm hoping to grow. I really love being a supervisor and just really nurturing that part of my practice as well. As far as my continuing education endeavors, thanks to you, Catherine, I'll be providing one through Rise in September on the transition from clinician to supervisor. And there will be some geeky elements in there too. And then I'm going to so Geek Therapeutics is having their very first own convention in Texas in July called Geek Ed. And I'm going to be presenting on two different topics. One will be using Belle from Beauty and the Beast to work with self-esteem. And the other one will be how to combine internal family systems with tabletop role-playing games. So I just really love teaching and training, and I'm really excited for those opportunities and anything else I get myself into. And that's
Awesome.
So basically day to day, I'm seeing clients and working on all of these other things throughout, making PowerPoints, emailing people, and getting myself
you
out
are
there.
a busy woman, Dawn. I mean, having of private practice,
Mhm.
supervision, associates,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
planning for these public speaking events. I mean,
I love it.
that's a lot of work. Yeah, yeah, it's
Having a
amazing. I love
blast.
it.
Mhm.
Love it.
Yeah.
So we'll jump right into it. What is geek therapy?
So I'll start with more of a formal definition, and then I'll tell you about how I describe it to clients. So on Geek Therapeutics' website, there's this definition where it describes geek therapy as using different paradigms of thought, intellectual curiosities, and special interests outside of normal social conformity. So, you mentioned video games, but also things like comic books, TV shows, board games, books. It helps to bridge the gap between geeks and therapists. And there's extensive evidence based practice to support it and to help clients gain normalcy, a sense of community, which people who do identify as geeky don't always feel. And also, it's been shown to help with anxiety, depression, a variety of other mental health conditions, and helps clients understand who they are through their interests. So, the way if a client reaches out to me and they're like, "What's this geek therapy thing I saw on your Psychology Today profile?" I'll kind of say, well, I have specific training to use what you're interested in our sessions. So let's say you have a character and you're like, yeah, that definitely describes me to a T. Or it's a couple and they're like, yeah, that's our relationship or that's the relationship we want. I can weave that into our work. And there may be times as well, if I think of something that's relevant, I might weave it in and be like, that reminds me of this person's story. Have you ever heard of this? So that's how I describe it as, I can use what you're interested in our work if you're interested in doing that. One important thing to note is that Geek Therapeutics, as a company, has the only viable credential on Geek Therapy. So it's copy marked and trademarked. To help make sure it stays standardized. So if you think about how if you can't call what you're doing art therapy if you're not a certified art therapist. So it would be the same thing. Like if you're documenting, you can't say, "Oh, I did geek therapy." If you haven't gone through one of their programs, you could say geek therapy informed or used clients' interest in Batman to explore their grief. You could still use geek therapy. You just can't call it that unless you've gone through their programs. And there's many different programs to choose from. The Certified Geek Therapist training is the program I went through. It's 2 years. There's a specific amount of training hours that you do, and supervision with a certified geek therapist supervisor. Um, there's the Certified Geek Specialist training. So those are for people who are unlicensed clinicians, students, peer specialists, even parents who want to know how to use geek therapy in their lives. And then there's the Therapeutic Game Master program. So this is a 9-week program where you can learn how to use tabletop role-playing games, creating characters, and other skills to be able to actually start and run your own therapeutic role-playing game group. There's also the Problematic Game Specialist training. So this is for professionals like you, Catherine, who are interested in incorporating video game culture, game design, exploring problematic gaming, and pro-social benefits of gaming into their work and their lives. In addition to that, Geek Therapeutics also has live virtual continuing education trainings that occur. So you can attend one of those even without being part of one of the training programs. You can go to those live events. I conducted one in 2023 on using classic Disney to work with non-traditional family dynamics. And I will say it's fun when you attend, it's fun as a presenter. So yeah, that's another way to learn about different geek therapy approaches. There's also contracting opportunities. So I contract as a clinician with Geek Therapeutics, and other endeavors that they do to grow the geek therapy field. Like they're working on publishing a couple different books right now, and they are open to receiving abstracts if anyone wants to write a chapter in that book. So overall, it's been just a really great community, really rewarding, and like I said, fun to be a part of.
I love it. And I can tell that you are very enthusiastic about this type of therapy and the work that you do. And thank you for sharing all of that with us. Hey, it's Catherine here. I hope you are enjoying this episode. We're going to take a quick break to listen to these ads from our sponsors. The next time you need continuing education units, I highly recommend the Therapist Development Center. When I started this podcast, I reached out to the founder, Amanda Rowan, to see if she was interested in being a sponsor. And she jumped at the chance to support her fellow social worker. TDC has helped more than 100,000 social workers pass their licensing exam, including myself. I love that TDC CE courses are engaging and relevant. Amanda and her experts give us clear and practical clinical skills that we can immediately apply to our work. Some of my favorites are the Edge of Life Suicide Prevention course, where Amanda shares her personal experiences, and their They Did What? Law and Ethics course that looks at real cases where therapists face formal disciplinary actions. They also have a great telehealth course. We are legally required to take continuing education to increase our competence, and most other courses out there don't actually teach the material in a way that we can learn it, but TDC does. You can also check out the links in the show notes. So it sounds
Sure.
ultimately like the overview of Geek Therapy. I guess what I heard or what I hear from you is using things like media, video games, pop culture to integrate into the therapy sessions in order to facilitate a deeper understanding of client dynamics, maybe of client sense of self, develop greater awareness, and just to help build that therapeutic rapport with the client. So just introducing these and using interventions inspired by this, I mean, you're doing so many interventions already. So that's really amazing.
Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of a supplement to any other type of therapy you do. You can use cognitive behavioral therapy and incorporate, okay, what villain from Star Wars is saying those negative thoughts that so it really enhances any other work. And you're absolutely right in the rapport building of you're literally speaking their language by talking about what they're interested in, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, how you've given us kind of a little teaser about how you use this in session. Can you give us, maybe another example of the type of clients, not giving away any identifying information, but maybe like
Mhm.
gender and age, and then, how you integrate the interventions from Geek Therapy?
Okay, yeah. So in my experience, anyone who has been open to trying it has benefited from it. It's not for everybody, but if a client is into it, they tend to do well with it. I've specifically seen it do wonders for clients who do say, like, oh, yeah, I identify as a geek. With neurodivergent clients, tend to really latch on. But really, all ages, demographics, situations, and this idea that we learn a lot about somebody based on what they're interested in. Can even apply to people who don't identify as geeky. Like, I can think of a client um, who does not identify as geeky, but they really like the show Friends. And one of their goals was like having a healthy romantic relationship. So I said, "What do you like about Friends?" And it was, "Well, it's funny, it's predictable. I relate to the characters, and issues are resolved quickly, like by the end of the episode." And sure enough, those are things they were looking for in a romantic partner. So someone with a sense of humor, someone emotionally safe and predictable, they can relate to, and who can help resolve issues. So that was kind of an in for exploring what they were looking for in a relationship, outside of just kind of asking about it. Um, yeah. So I mean, otherwise. I had a client a while back who was very depressed, and one of the first times they smiled was when I was like, "What do you do?" And they said, "Well, I'm involved in Dungeons and Dragons." So I pulled out this, okay, let's create a character about your depression. And So it was a way for that client to explain their depression to me in a way that wasn't so overwhelming and was actually kind of fun. Um, so yeah, I mean, I use it, with really anyone. I kind of dip my toes in with anybody and see how it goes. Um, Even with you mentioned teenage boys, teenagers. I've done a lot of work when it comes to school. Like, who wants to, what teenager wants to go to school, right? So it'd be like, what game are you playing? And they tell me, well, I mean, I think Minecraft is pretty big. So I'd say, okay, imagine, school is Minecraft. What are your barriers? What are your tools? And it would be like, well, the barriers are the teachers, and the tools are I can go and study, or I can use flashcards, or and kind of thinking of moving up your, kind of getting higher grades and moving up to the next grade as leveling up, to make something that's daunting a little bit more fun. um, yeah.
I love those
Yeah.
examples. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing that, Dawn. It's very relatable because I know I know I work with that population not very often just because of kind of my modalities and specialties, but they definitely come across, in any kind of role, especially working with kids or, like you said, even adults who do enjoy the geeky stuff. So definitely helpful for those tips. I'm wondering what would be maybe the most challenging part about the work that you do?
Okay. So one of them is just that it's so up and coming right now. A lot of people and clinicians don't know about it. So it's kind of just being able to explain what it is and gain the buy-in if people aren't immediately into it. I think also the societal stigma around geeks, and especially with geeky people who are interested in geeky things being perceived as childish, babyish. I think while there's been a lot of strides in this way, it's still very much there, where I've had clients feeling maybe ashamed to say, like, I still watch cartoons as an adult, or I prefer socializing online, and is that weird? And so a lot of squashed inner children and adults and teenagers, of people just being ashamed to be like, hey, yeah, I like this. And even as a young clinician who identifies as geeky myself, sometimes I might feel shy about bringing it up to a client. Like, will they think I'm not taking them seriously? Will they think I'm childish? I mean, I do it anyway, but even feeling it as a therapist, and I can feel it with my clients, and I'm constantly working to try to break that stigma, because I'm all about setting the inner child free and letting it come out. And that's a big part of my work, is helping clients be playful and explore that. But it's certainly still there, and would probably, if I had a challenge to choose, it would probably be that.
Yeah, definitely very real challenge, overcoming the stigma in our culture. And it's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking, man, that's really sad. I had never thought about it but there is that stigma around watching cartoons and playing with toys or playing video games as an adult. But I'm thinking for me, it's a privilege that I have as a grown adult woman that if I wanted to, I don't know, buy some stuffed animals. I guess it'd be a little weird, but it's not like that weird if I'm saying like, "Oh, I did this." Especially if you have a kid, it kind of gives you an into that area a little
Hmm.
bit. And that's one of the beautiful things about children is that they do help us
Hmm.
explore our own inner child as well.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I'm wondering, what would you say is the most rewarding part of this work that you do?
Okay. So for one thing, it's really really fun. I love it's so much fun, and I think as helping professionals, we get so focused on helping and serious, and that we forget that it's okay and actually really good for us to enjoy our work. And I just have a ball, with clients who take it and run with it. We'll be silly, creative, we'll laugh together, while also doing incredibly meaningful work. On the other end of that, it's been incredibly rewarding to see how clients are able to navigate through it, maybe not so much in a silly, playful way, but in looking at things like their trauma, their inner demons, their kind of internal parts of themselves that feel shame and kind of I've used quite a bit. So I've had a couple of veterans and people who are actively in the military. So I've used Captain America and Rambo to kind of help them talk about those experiences and what it's like in a way that's kind of farther away, kind of a safer way. And I've had clients, who are into Dungeons and Dragons, like I said, put names and characters and attributes to things that they feel really shameful about, different parts of themselves, in order to build self compassion and heal. So it's kind of like yeah, this is really fun. And at the same time, this is really powerful. So I find a lot of reward in that in both ways.
Yes, very powerful because we're tapping
Hmm.
into a population who traditionally has been neglected, has been left out of the therapy world because I never learned about how to use games or video games or movies and pop culture in therapy sessions, right? Everything is so, very cut and dry and not very creative or artistic like. And so I love that this just kind of brings life back to the therapy room and really helps a population who traditionally has been neglected or forgotten about.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a very creative therapist myself. So it's really fun to get in there and do that. And when I have clients who are creative in that way, um, and like I said, it enhances more of um, the work. Maybe that's, I don't want to say not as exciting, but it brings a playful, like an interesting spin to other work.
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely. Kind of bringing those clients who've been left behind, and maybe it takes so much work to even sit with a therapist. I
Yes.
found it as well for clients who maybe have trouble opening up or trouble being there with a therapist, of just the value of spending some time talking about their favorite version of Star Trek or their favorite movie or their favorite superhero without even touching on their depression, their trauma. Like, let's talk about you and, what you enjoy. And then it'll be like, oh, that therapy wasn't so bad. As a family therapist, I also bring it into doing genograms. So when I'm mapping out a genogram and I'm asking clients about their family, I'll say like, okay, what character would you use to describe this family member for each of their kind of essential people in their family? So it kind of adds extra fun to that kind of family history building as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yes. And you mentioned that you're a creative. I can definitely see that. So if you're on YouTube, you can see her background. But for those of you listening on the Straight Audio podcast, in her background, she has a bunch of books, and I see books and I see a picture of the Hulk back there and a bunch of different
Mhm.
characters. There's stuffed animals on her shelf. There's a little Batman. I see a bunch of stuff going on back there. Do you use that stuff, during your therapy sessions and in the work that you do?
So part of what I learned through Geek Therapy training and supervision is the way that you set up your office can actually help supplement your work. So I don't have him. He must have fallen down, but I had Flounder from The Little Mermaid up there, and one of my clients recently was like, "Oh, Flounder!" And then we started bringing The Little Mermaid into our work. So having it out there and seeing what the clients might pick out is kind of an in for what to explore. But sometimes I'll refer to what is behind me, like if we're talking about anger, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, you see the Hulk back there." I also. Um, I used this last night. This is Luisa from Encanto. Um,
Oh,
I
Louisa.
I brought her I brought her out in therapy in one of my sessions yesterday to talk about the weight of carrying intergenerational trauma. And so yeah, I mean, it's a mix of if a client sees something that they like, or if I feel like I want to reach back and look into it. I'm in the process of remodeling and creating it differently back there. But yeah, so it's a mix of both. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for checking it out.
No, of course. I love it. It's very creative. It's a great use of space and the video. And she pulled out a little doll from the Encanto movies. I love it. I love it. I love it. So you mentioned earlier about the different certifications available through Geek Therapeutics website. And it sounds like this is the only legitimate place that you can go currently at this time of recording to get certified in geek therapy. Is that what you would recommend people do, is go to that website to learn more if they're interested in just learning more about these therapeutic modalities and possibly getting certified?
Yes, absolutely. Starting with the Geek Therapeutics website, which is geektherapeutics.com. Um, There is also Geek Therapeutics also has a social media presence. So on Facebook, there's the Geek Therapeutics group and the Geek Therapeutics training group that you can join. There's also a newsletter that you can subscribe to and kind of see what's going on. I believe it's called Geek Beacon. It's on the website somewhere. It tells you how to join the newsletter. Um, Anything, so there is also on Facebook, there's some sort of other geek therapy group. What you want to look for, their symbol is a red and green, like D20 dice. um, so yeah, I would say those are the best avenues to go, is their website and Facebook. There is also the person who runs it. His name is Dr. Anthony Bean, and he's very responsive with any questions or anybody who has interest in it. He's very interested in connecting. Anyone can also, if they have any questions, can also reach out to me, and I can answer their question or connect them with people who can. Anybody who wants to know more.
Perfect. How can we get in contact with you?
So you can email me at therapythatgetsme@gmail.com. I also have a variety of profiles. So Psychology Today. I'm also on the RISE supervisor directory, the LMFT approved supervisor directory, and on Geek Therapeutics website, they have a therapist locator. Oh, that's another thing as well. If you want to find a geek therapist to go to, there's a therapist locator there where I am. So I can be reached in any way. I say email is probably the quickest way I'd get back to you, and I really just would love to connect and collaborate in any way I can for anyone. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So people are, just to sum it up for the listener, people will reach out to you if they are interested in possibly doing therapy, sending you a referral for therapy, starting clinical supervision, and maybe even workshops.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You got it. And listener, those links are in the show notes. So go ahead and open up your podcast app. If you're interested, go ahead and click where it says geektherapeutics.com and learn more about getting certified. Reach out to Dawn if you have any questions or feedback for her. And make sure you share this episode. We're not about gatekeeping around here. We want to make sure that everybody who may be interested in this type of information gets this information. So go ahead and just text this to a friend. You will not regret it, I promise. So thank you so much, Dawn. It's been amazing talking with you today.
It has. Thank you too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe and text this episode to a friend. If you want more, there are a few ways we can get to know each other and work together. First, definitely subscribe to the Friday resource email list. The link is in the show notes. And that's where you can learn more about the courses I offer, including Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist and the Pulse Basics for Medical Social Workers. I'll also be sending out occasional tips and resources and other happenings within the social work industry. And for all your clinical supervision needs, be sure to visit risedirectory.com. This is a national directory of clinical supervisors for social workers, and we also provide free resources that you can use within your own clinical supervision. Lastly, if you have more individualized needs, I do offer coaching, individual consultations, and am available for public speaking engagements for social workers and change makers. Lastly, the boring legal stuff, but very important. The information in this podcast is not meant to be a supplement for therapy, professional advice, or clinical supervision. This content is provided as is solely for informational purposes. It is not legal, health, or safety advice. I am not advising you as a therapist. Organizations should engage their own experts to ensure any adopted measures are compliant with applicable laws and standards in their jurisdictions. The opinions expressed by individuals or organizations are their own and do not reflect the views or opinions of Social Workers Rise or Catherine Moore. References to specific products or organizations do not constitute any endorsement or recommendations by Social Workers Rise.